That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this? It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people are asking questions? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. He has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets, and they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. It's really sad. If people understand that a game is a game, if people understand that nobody, no matter what they do, is worth paying $2 or $3 million a year for, people should be able to get rich if they want to, by the sweat of their individual labor, by going out and doing something for the world, not by taking people's minds away from the emperor. But let me tell you something. When 150 of the most powerful men and women in the world can meet in secret in Baden-Baden, Germany, and plot the fate of billions, and nobody even cares about it, but 6 football players go to lunch together, and it's in the headlines across the country.
If it's on TV and a famous face says something, then it must be true. He doesn't have to show you facts or anything else. You've been brought up with these faces. That's why they keep these guys on television into their 70s and 80s. You've grown up with this father figure who's on television every night at 6 o'clock, in your house, in your room, staring right at you. And he's a father figure. Would he tell you a lie? So you naturally never suspect him. And this same man will lead you through new topics. He'll introduce experts on the topics. They'll have a little summary at the end of every talk, and you are now left with the conclusion that's presented to you. You don't arrive at it, it's given to you, and it's good enough for you. We're programmed today perfectly just like machines. Brzezinski said himself, the public will shortly be unable to think or reason for themselves. They will expect the media to do all their thinking and reasoning for them. Well, that's happened today. That's why people today can't think outside of the programming from television. This is a scientific dictatorship which Bertrand Russell said and the Huxleys said they would bring in, the scientifically controlled society.
Is that I'm trying to wake up a people who on a daily basis are proving the ones that I'm warning them about to be right.
School children were into, adults became adults and got onto adult things. So it was unimaginable at the time that people could actually believe that there's even a need for adult sports and entertainment, never mind having arenas built.
Adult sports and entertainment.
Stop watching endless media footages about war, horror, violence and all the rest of it, because all that is, that's just feeding these beings that don't have our best interests at heart. We're just food, they're just sucking it all up. It consists of pure brainwashing and enabling us to simply be fodder for these beings. There are beings which are just feeding on the fear. And as someone who actually grew up in those times, I grew up in the times of the nuclear threat. When you are in a state of fear, your corporeal awareness is gone. And you're actually in the future or in the past. You've lost your connection to the present moment. As soon as you become aware of your body, this enables you to become aware of being in the present moment, of love the present moment, and you've diffused the situation of being somebody's fear food. Stop being a being's fear food by becoming tuned into the present moment. As soon as I'm tuned into the present moment, which begins with corporeal awareness and ends up with my awareness of my heart, I am not food for any being. My little tap has been switched off. No one can take any food from me now because I'm in the moment, I'm fully aware, and I'm tuned to my heart. That is how I do it. So everyone can do this at all times. And I want to throw in this one. This is one of the principles, one of the core principles of shamanism is as follows. Nothing is as it appears to be. If the mainstream society says this is good for you, you might want to look at that again. If mainstream society says this is bad for you, you might want to revisit that possibly.
Around all day long, every minute of the day, worried about everything. Worried about the air, worried about the water, worried about the soil. Worried about insecticides, pesticides, food additives, carcinogens. Worried about radon gas, worried about asbestos. Worried about saving endangered species. Let me tell you about endangered species, all right? Saving endangered species is just one more arrogant attempt by humans to control nature. What? Are these fucking people kidding me? Save the planet? We don't even know how to take care of ourselves yet. We haven't learned how to care for one another. We're going to save the fucking planet? I'm getting tired of that shit. I'm tired of fucking Earth Day. I'm tired of these self-righteous environmentalists, these white bourgeois liberals who think the only thing wrong with this country is there aren't enough bicycle paths. People trying to make the world safe for their Volvos. Besides, environmentalists don't give a shit about the planet. You know what they're interested in? A clean place to live. Their own habitat. They're worried that someday in the future they might be personally inconvenienced. Narrow, unenlightened self-interest doesn't impress me. Besides, there is nothing wrong with the planet. Nothing wrong with the planet. The planet is fine. The people are fucked. Difference. The planet is fine. Compared to the people, the planet is doing great. Been here 4.5 billion years. Do you ever think about the arithmetic? And we've only been engaged in heavy industry for a little over 200 years. 200 years versus 4.5 billion. And we have the conceit to think that somehow we're a threat, and we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference?
The masses of the people have no idea in the world. And the reason why the Western civilization do not know any of this stuff is totally foreign, because this kind of subject has nothing to do with basketball, football, tennis, golf balls, soccer, all the silly games our masters have given us kids to play with. Give them a ball and let them go out and play so that they don't think too much about what the bosses are doing behind the scenes. Well, I never bought into this, go out and play ball, even as a child. I didn't want to go out and play ball when friends were coming over to visit my family and they would tell us kids, go out and play ball. That to me, even as a kid, I knew. It means the adults want to talk about something and they don't want you children hearing it. I wanted to stay. I would always tell my dad, I don't want to go out and play ball. I want to know what you guys are talking about in the front room when the women are out in the kitchen. I want to hear what the men are talking about, because that's where the action is. And so I don't want to be out watching a ball game while the people who claim to be our masters and own us are playing games with our lives behind the scenes and manipulating us, and we were so stupid we buy into it. I have never bought into stupidity and ignorance. I've always known there's more to the story than meets the eye.
Well, they did that even back in Rome. To distract everybody, they would have big games at the Colosseum.
That's right. We still have it in L.A. Everybody goes to the Colosseum. And we have cage fighting and martial arts and, all the prize fightings and wrestling, WrestleMania. All of this is entertainment for the masses.
The grand reality of the species that you are a part of is repugnant, offensive. And I sit here and look at the world. They've been telling us the whole time. But if you don't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear, you're certainly not going to know that they're telling you. Or, if you're lapping from the trough of the mainstream media, you're probably not going to be all that savvy and aware of truth, facts, reality. What does it say about a human being that cannot, will not, or is incapable of seeing the deception? What does that say? And all of the things that come to my mind are all negative, meaning they're unconscious, they're unthinking, they're more herd-like, they have no perception, they don't critically think, they don't use the faculties that were imbued into them when they were born of intelligence and logic and reasoning. And to know that this is being perpetuated by billionaires and governments around the world, which, when you really do the math, they pale in comparison to the whole of the human body, the body of humanity. The state of consciousness and awareness of 90+% of the human species is such that they are clearly being manipulated and led like herd animals off the cliff. Something is driving the lemmings, and the sheer magnitude of agendas at play, and what it is that I know about the details of the agendas at play, and the human perception does not change. The manipulation and the deception continues every day, perpetuated, unfortunately, so largely by the human herd, by the ignorant masses who are too busy with their jobs, making their money, to pick their head up from the grazing and actually think. They'll hold on to their perception with a white-knuckle death grip and defend what they believe, what they think they know. It's been handed to them off the television, the mainstream media. You can see these people on TV as the authorities, and the psychological state of the human species to that of a psychological child. Lacking in perception, lacking in awareness, lacking in understanding, lacking in knowledge. It's one of the most efficient ways to drive the human animal into that type of state psychologically. And our psychology plays a major role in our experience of life and our perception and all that stuff. It's the sheer amount of unrelenting trauma that the human species has gone through in whatever period that fits, the last 100 years, 300 years, 500 years. Something massive has happened. Or when you look at it as a whole, but it could be a series of small events, large events, wars, and the types of things that have been happening on this planet to put humans, and to such a large degree, the children of our species that will develop with this, into a severely traumatized, psychologically and emotionally damaged. And as I said before, when the human being has all kinds of trauma and baggage and damage that is stuck and contained within their mind, within their psyche, and that stuff has not been healed, cleared, cleaned, dealt with, there's not a lot of room for growth within the mind, within the psyche. There's not a lot of room for any other thing until that is dealt with. Unfortunately, in order to deal with these types of things that so profoundly limit and thwart the growth, tie back the growth of the human being, unfortunately, the reality of it is that in order to deal with that, in order to heal from that, you have to go back through it. And humans do not like pain. Humans will fight you. They will get very violent if they see you pushing them towards something that is going to induce a lot of pain. Obviously, we don't like pain. Pleasure is good, pain sucks, and everybody understands why. So when you have a substantial portion or percentage of the human species that has been so horribly traumatized in the myriad of ways human beings have been traumatized on this planet that need to deal with inner wounding from childhood, adolescence, adulthood, possibly, if any of it holds true, the traumas that are contained within genetic memory, the types of things that are harder to quantify but seem plausible, we are dealing with this shit quite literally on multiple levels of our existence. Yet we don't have the proverbial playbook or recipe for what to do. Something has willfully, intentionally, with malice and forethought, continuously done this to the human species in order to traumatize the human species. Recognizing that we are a species that's born blank, that we are mental, emotional, psychological, energy-based beings, that whatever it is that created us did not give us inherent fortifications for these core aspects of our beings. We're just like, we're ripe for manipulation. We're like defenseless herd animals surrounded by an army of hunters with precision hunting rifles and good scopes. And the more I have sat and thought about this, the more I have tried to sit in contemplation of the human position in the chain of life, in the chain of existence, from the second dimension to the third dimension to the fourth dimension and all that other stuff, I still struggle to accept that we were created for the purposes that we so clearly appear to have been created for. Because you don't make a species like us without imbuing them with some inherent knowledge about themselves, how to protect themselves, who the enemy is, what the enemy is, what form the enemy takes in a construct that is full of evil. Quite frankly, it's encompassed the entirety of this place, and people just, because of the shiny lights and the flashy things, haven't been able to see that because they've been so transified, if that's a word, by the hypnotic, whatever the hell it is that comes off of the TV and all the other things that happens. Or, hey, before TV it was religion. And what the priests forced into the heads and minds and beliefs and perceptions of humans. Now, I don't necessarily know what else is out there in the context that I'm referring to this. You'll see what I'm saying. But humankind is the most manipulated, tormented, and all kinds of other words in that realm, species that I can think of. See, we don't torment our animals. While we do kill them and eat them, largely speaking, it's not torment. Even though I can sit here and say, and you've all heard me say, well, we do animals as far as eating them and killing them is barbaric and all that stuff. Yep, it's true. But it's not a prolonged period of torture. It's not a prolonged period of hell. It's not a prolonged period of purgatory. They go in the chute, and the slaughter guy does what he does. It's relatively quick, even though it's barbaric. That said, when you look at what happens to humans, it's slow, it's painful, it's agonizing, it's tormenting, it's torturous. It's so many fucking things that we have to live with every day via and deal with the traumas to the mind, to the psychology, to the psyche, to the emotional body. On and on and on, we get to continuously deal with and experience this type of shit. And when the manipulation that we see and all of the horrible shit that we see happening to humans is, to such a large degree, being perpetuated onto the vast majority of the human species by other humans, or would it be more appropriate for me to say by other beings that look human, that inhabit human meat suits, but their core essence, the animating force of that otherwise human meat suit, is not actually human. I know it's a bizarre theory, but when you look at the level of toxicity out of the psychopaths, the billionaires, the government people, the Jews, and all of these people that are all part of this, as I've said before, this is a conglomerate of people that do not function with the rule book of life, of living, of being human, that anybody that is human, truly human, does. We're dealing with a race of beings, and I say that in quotes, that most of us have a hard time thinking like them, thinking of the things that they think of, or doing the things that they think of. And when we see otherwise humans doing these types of things, it's likely because of the profound influence, the persistent influence of these toxic, rancid, psychopathic, non-human entities that